Warning. Certain themes of this video could be triggering to some viewers. This video will be discussing LGBTQ+ social issues and the AIDS epidemic in the United States. Viewers' discretion is advised. Today, I want to talk about this shot. Two men emotionally embrace each other, tears streaming down one's eyes. The crying man grips tightly to this individual, clinging to this man for dear life. This moment feels so personal and intimate, even life-changing. And yet, as we absorb the room around them, we see despondent, unfazed patrons that barely even notice and hardly pretend to care. They stick to their books and faraway gazes, avoiding any chance of being brought into the situation. What is going on here? What does it all mean? Welcome to New York City, circa 1990. This concrete wonderland of American culture houses some of the finest, most unique individuals under its beaming streetlights. Along with the billboards and brick buildings, families forged by struggle and strife work to stay alive in the world that couldn't care less about their existence. This is Pose, the hit FX television show that follows various members of the LGBTQ+ community in the late 80s and early 90s in New York. Along with the discrimination and persecution the community faces in the show, they also struggle to survive the midst of the AIDS epidemic. These two themes overlap frequently in the show and provides one of the main overarching conflicts the characters face. To escape from the dark reality the show paints, individuals in the LGBTQ+ community engage in balls, which give them a place to openly be themselves and celebrate who they are via fashion and pageantry. Although ball culture cannot save these people from their difficult lives, it can give them one night that they don't have to hide. They can show up as who they are and not face the rejection of a cruel society around them. The show follows a few different families in the New York ball scene. Families tended to be groups of LGBTQ+ individuals living together that would replace the families they grew up in that didn't accept them. These families would compete in the balls for trophies and prizes. In the show, we witness lots of people who seem lost or stuck that begin to bloom into prospering individuals, especially at the end of season 2. But even with the success, multiple characters are struggling to live with AIDS, including one family's house mother, Blanca Rodriguez Evangelista, and longtime friend and host of the balls, Pray Tell. Both characters make an emphasis on fighting as long as they can for the sake of the people around them. Since people need their help, they refuse to go quietly into the night. At face value, Pose appears to be a very intriguing and dramatic historical fiction show that takes place in an equally intriguing and dramatic city. However, Pose is a fictional recount of the sobering and difficult life for the LGBTQ+ community during the AIDS crisis. Homophobia and transphobia were rampant, and with the disproportionate amount of gay men that were being affected by AIDS, homophobic sentiments were fueled even more, with one journalist even saying, quote, "It's known as the gay plague," end quote. The fear of AIDS among the public in tandem with the prejudice and hatred for the LGBTQ+ community made life incredibly difficult and terrifying for many in the community at the time. But even with the show talking about historical events, the themes of prejudice and discrimination that the show discussed feel alarmingly applicable to today. With the show's overarching historical themes of discrimination and struggling with the AIDS crisis, we finally get to this shot. This takes place in Season 2, Episode 7, Blow. In the episode, this young man, Ricky, is convinced by Pray Tell to get tested for HIV, the virus behind AIDS. To his dismay, Ricky finds out that he is tested positive. The news shakes him to his core, throwing him into a state of shock and disbelief. As he leaves the doctor's office to inform Pray Tell of the results, Ricky immediately breaks down in his arms, letting his emotions flow into the loving, accepting shoulder of Pray Tell. While they're in this moment, though, all those around them seem to barely notice or care about the situation going on. Instead, they continue on with their lives. The scene is not just a gloomy revelation for these characters, it is also a demonstration of effective shot composition and an example of how to write a quick but powerful metaphor. The composition of the shot is satisfying to the eye for many reasons. One reason is the use of lines. There are multiple lines that point us to the center of the shot where the emotion is occurring. We see the chairs lined up to subconsciously move our focus towards the center. The same phenomena occurs with the lights on the ceiling that also direct our eyes towards the center of the frame. Hell, even the angle of the walls help point us in the right direction. This shot also uses color contrast effectively. The walls and doors around Ricky and Pray Tell are very bland and plain. Ricky and Pray Tell, however, are clad in colorful clothes that help them stand out in the plain setting around them. And finally, the slow creeping zoom out to close out the shot emphasizes the isolation of these two characters in this moment. By the end of the slowly crawling zoom out, they look completely alone in a very lifeless space. The metaphor of this shot is my favorite part though, and the composition of the shot contributes to the metaphor heavily. My interpretation of the shot is that Ricky and Pray Tell are representing the LGBTQ+ community at the time. The unconcerned hospital patrons around them represent the general public or culture that ignored the AIDS crisis and the clear pain that the community was struggling with. While the other hospital patrons are staring off in the distance or returning their books, Ricky and Pray Tell are holding each other close. This symbolizes how the LGBT community had to care for its own because the world around them wouldn't. Historically, this was a common phenomena, ranging from the St. Patrick's Cathedral protest, which is portrayed in the show, to the formation of the Gay Men's Health Crisis, which is the oldest HIV and AIDS service organization in the world. The slow zoom out only further contributes to this feeling that the LGBT community was isolated and alone during such a tragic and anxious time. This scene does a fantastic job of summarizing the major overarching theme or conflict of the show, while also conveying the tragic metaphor of the LGBTQ+ community's struggle to survive in such a terrifying time. Tim Fitzsimmons of NBC wrote that, quote, "When the AIDS plague finally took hold of the United States, it surged through communities that the straight world preferred not to see." End quote. Fitzsimmons is referring to how AIDS severely impacted individuals with drug addictions and members of the LGBTQ+ community. Pose centers a lot of its plot around this historical context, especially with this scene. Although it's only a few seconds long, the shot left me speechless and in awe. It's my personal favorite shot in the entire series because it encapsulates so much historical context and hammers home the gravity of the situation perfectly. It's a satisfying shot in the eye and a cleverly constructed metaphor that digs straight into your emotions. Pose does a great job with its shot composition and writing throughout most of the show, but to me, this moment in particular stands out among the rest. It's brilliant and succeeds in everything that it was aiming to do. Pose is a very good show in its entirety, and I strongly recommend it. You could find the FX series on Netflix if you are interested in watching it. I will say though, that for those who are interested in watching the show, it does dive into some very deep, dark, and serious themes that could be potentially triggering for some viewers. Essentially, watch at your own discretion. Informational sources will be linked in the description. I am not sponsored by Pose, FX, Netflix, or anyone else affiliated with the show. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.